Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good evening. Welcome everyone. Hey, I just saw somebody switch places.
Everyone switched places.
Yeah.
The domino effect. So good evening, and I usually go from up to down, so let's say hi to our first guest, Luke from Blue Hour.
Yeah, hello.
How are you, man?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm good, yeah. Just had a power nap, but I'm alive. And we're also joined by Petra / Peachlyfe, joining us from Copenhagen.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good. I didn't sleep all day. I slept all night, actually.
Regular hours.
Yes.
Are you a morning person or a night person?
I'm very much a morning person. Yeah.
Okay.
I get up like at 6:30. I can't sleep anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at least when the clubs are not open. When the clubs are open, I tend to sleep a little bit longer.
Okay. Isn't that conflicting with sort of the nightlife times when you are touring or playing or?
A little bit maybe, but I mean, yeah. That's also why I say when the clubs are open, I tend to sleep longer but now here when I have a long break from doing stuff like that, I tend to go to bed, pretty early and then get up super early.
Oh.
Yeah, I like to have the mornings. They're so quiet.
That's true. Cool. And we're also joined by Sugar, also joining us from Copenhagen. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I also had a long power nap, so I'm fresh and ready for the chat. And I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. I also see a lot of people popping in, our regular viewers, and some people from watching this on Twitch, some of the Discord regulars. Hey, Robin. Belated congratulations to Robin, by the way. It was his birthday the other day. So everybody who's watching this, if they have any questions related to or directed to us directly, just don't hesitate and drop them in the comments, and we will hopefully get into those. That's pretty much it. That's all the rules. There are no rules. So let's talk about power naps and. I to be honest, I've basically adopted a regular, normal early morning rhythm, but I do like to work at night mostly. What about you, Luke?
I seem to kind of perk up a little bit in the latter part of the afternoon, for sure. And nothing really happens much in the morning for me, to be honest. But when it comes to the night, everyone's sort of settling down. They're finished with their days, and that's kind of when I feel like things start to begin for me creatively. And I can work, till pretty late, maybe 3 o'clock or sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time. When I work on music, it's quite few and far between, but when I do, it's kind of, I can't put it down once I've picked it up. It has to kind of be done.
Yeah.
So if that means I'm in the middle of the night and working through on something, then that's the way it is.
I always have the feeling that things are more quiet in my head once people stop buzzing around the city and it gets quieter outside, even though I don't really notice anything from outside, but still, I like to just have a sort of like an autobahn feeling, if you know what I mean. Just everything is the same for a few hours from midnight onwards, Mm-hmm. And I tend to work quite well with that, but if I have admin jobs, that's what I usually call them, like archiving or recording things, finishing things. That's something that I do better when it's daytime. Just with a cup of coffee and
Yeah, sure.
Just a straight head.
It actually changed quite a bit for me over the past years. A couple of years ago, I also preferred to work at night. Definitely, I would go in the studio at midday around 5 or 6, and then work all through the night. But now, I don't know if it's something to do with COVID or it's just changed for some reason that that now I prefer a lot to work in the morning. I can work at night too, but I definitely feel more focused, more clear-minded, and I can hear things better. I can hear when I'm just fucking around, staying in the same loop forever, or if I'm actually getting progress. If I work earlier in the day, and I make better decisions faster, I think. At the moment, at least.
Yeah. So it's more efficient to work early hours then.
Definitely, yeah. I think, and also me and Petra actually just made a new duo project, and when we work, we work from 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's just super efficient and really creative. Also, it's like when your mind is not already filled up with stuff from the day, work or whatever you have been doing, and you just get up, have coffee, and start working. I think for me at least, the creativity comes more just natural and doesn't have to be forced so much in a way.
One thing that I think about working in the evenings is your sort of, when it's dark, your sense of time kind of evaporates a little bit. So you don't have different signals throughout the day to give you impressions of when certain things are happening and what time it is, if it's lunchtime or whatever. You've eaten all your meals of the day already, maybe, or you've just had your dinner and then you've got everything in front of you to just go for, really.
Yeah. I can definitely follow the sentiment in that, but I mean, I've just never been able to do it. Like when I meet up with Nikolai, like at 10 o'clock, I've already been working 2 hours by myself. And yeah, it just feels so good. Actually, even sometimes if I start too late, I can't seem to like get started. Like if I start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it feels like the whole day's ruined for me because it's way too late. And I've just never been able to like.
I'll often forget just to eat dinner, for example, and then I'll find myself sort of shaking like 11 o'clock at night. It's kind of like buzzed out, and just like, I need to like eat something, take care, and whatever. But yeah, I enjoy working at night, and I definitely have a bit of a perk about me, which happens later in the day for some reason, but it's not always like that.
I think it also depends on what I'm doing. Like at night, I think it's really good if I'm just jamming and not, arranging or finishing up stuff. If I'm just making sound and let it go forever, I think you're absolutely right about the time evaporates and you kind of just go with it. But if I'm in a mode where I'm actually trying to finish something or get somewhere with something, I think it's much easier in the morning.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the task at hand, really.
Yeah.
It's kind of more creative, sort of loosely working on an idea, then maybe that's possible, later as well as earlier in the day. But if you've got to do something quite strategic, like a mix, maybe it's better approaching that with, your coffee in the morning.
So you just mentioned collaboration between Petra and Sugar. I'm addressing both of you at the same time, but can you tell me more about that? What is the project about?
Yeah, well, we just started last summer when at that time I was living in Berlin, but it was just after COVID started. So I went back to Denmark because I didn't really know what it was going to be and how many was going to get sick. And I thought, if I'm going to get sick, I'd rather get sick in Denmark than in Germany. And then, I didn't have so much to do. And Nikolai asked if he should collaborate on a track. And we met up in the studio. And then we thought, why not make an EP? And then it's just been like a space to maybe get a little bit away from techno sounds and try to experiment more together. And we're both really good at not saying no to anything. So we're like trying out all ideas, like trying them out like way over the top, and then maybe taking them a bit down, after some time.
That's quite precise. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good approach. So any of the strange or out there ideas you want to drop here? What came up in those sessions?
I think it's how to say it. I mean, if you work on a techno track, obviously it can go in many directions too. But I think in terms of our project, it's hard to be precise about it. But I'd say that I think what we come up with and how we work, we both agree that none of us could have done it on our own. It's like, okay, we experiment with weird popish melodies or new computer techniques that none of us have tried before, but that we agree to try together, and we dive into them, and then we manipulate them further or run them through its effects machines or stuff like this. Just go down roads that I wouldn't, or Petra wouldn't necessarily have gone down on their own.
Right. And
I love the name, by the way.
Yeah.
Ultra Harmonizer.
Ultra Harmonizer, yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, is that I guess, when you collaborate, you kind of can when there's two people, it's not always an obvious, the result's not always an obvious result of the two people coming together, but it's very often like a third identity or like a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Has that been the case in your collaboration so far? Like, I think definitely. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's.
So what are some of the things that you did completely different than how you would normally approach it?
I mean, for example, the thing that, like, if you're collaborating with someone that you haven't really collaborated with so much before, like if you keep saying, I don't think that's a good idea, maybe let's try something else, then the process will stop quite quickly, I think. Like, so you just need to keep a really open mind, otherwise you'll get tired of each other pretty quick, I think.
Mm. And if something goes wrong, you can point at the other person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't such a good idea after all.
Yeah.
It wasn't my idea.
But also something like we've been, like, after, when we feel like a track is done, we've been taking the whole mix and then send it through 4 different effects machines, and then having like those tracks and cutting them into the mix, like as small effects, as one part of.
Yeah, basically taking the whole track and putting it out on the mixing discs, and then just jamming with the faders with I don't know, many effect machines at once, and then recording that back in and layering in underneath the original track. But I also think that I think we've been quite good at reinforcing with each other what we see or know that we're good at. You know, for example, Petra is I don't know if you can call it that, but trained musician from the conservatory in Copenhagen, and I'm not a trained musician. I'm a self-taught musician, and there's some things that I've been interested in with Petra, for example, where I've been asking, okay, can we try to do this, or try to do, just be curious and be, as Petra says, open-minded about whatever comes into mind that we can put into the music.
Nice.
Someone was asking in the chat what kind of music genre we're talking about with your collaboration.
That's a really hard question.
And I mean, Sugar played it to me last week or something, and it's really hard to sum up because it's super, super experimental. It has a bit of a kind of techno trance undertone, but also electronica influence and a live influence even in one track. Yeah, it's very wide spanning, I would say. It's hard to pin down with what kind of genre it is. It's just experimental electronic dance music, I guess.
Yeah, it's always fun if people ask you to what genre your music belongs to. It's so hard, because I mean, I don't know anyone who actually thinks in advance what genre they should be making stuff in,
Yeah, and I think most people would kind of, the producers themselves would have like a different answer to what other people would commonly say as well, maybe.
Yeah,
Actually,
true.
with one of the tracks that we were making, we said to each other, should we try and make a pop track? The question, yes.
Yes, it was.
But then we said, should we try and make a pop track? And then we like put all our effort into making a pop track. And then of course it's nothing like a pop track at all. But I mean, it was an intention from the beginning.
Yeah. Sometimes you need a starting point, like some idea that sets you off, and even if it ends up in completely different territory, that doesn't really matter. But so one of the ideas can be, let's make something like this, like an idea that you would normally not use as a starting point, but maybe it gets you into a certain mood or a certain territory, and you can work from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's do a little studio tour. I see Luke sitting in a space which is obviously a studio, but what else
this
is there
actually,
except for plants?
This is actually my living room in my house where I have my studio.
Nice.
There's another space that I can go to mix that a friend has. But yeah, I'm not so gear heavy here really. I mean, just have my monitors, got like a few machines, MS2000s, Waldorf Pulse, a couple of the Behringer things like the Pro 1 and the MS1 and the TD3, and then my love is really the JD800 from Roland's. It's just over here. And I'm mostly in the box. So actually, I'm not a massive gearhead. Really.
Well, it's all you need, man. It's plenty of stuff. No excuses there.
I mean, I've expanded and bought bits and sold bits, but mostly I end up just working in the box a lot of the time. And then if I want to kind of lay over a new part, I might try something out, like a pad from a JD800 or some acid line or something like that.
When did you get the JD? Is that something you had for a long time, or did you recently discovered it?
I can't remember when I got it. Like, must be more than 6 or 7 years ago. Weirdly enough, I bought it off DJ Zinc. Do you know DJ Zinc, who was a drum and bass producer?
Oh, okay.
He had like some pretty big hits. And I ended up kind of finding an ad and then going up there and then figuring out it was actually DJ Zinc's old one. I picked it up in London and shipped it over.
Did it still have his presets or his sounds in it?
I'm not sure. I think I just
did he
wiped
carefully
it.
cover his tracks?
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I mean, I'm sure some like amazing music has been made on that machine specifically. But yeah, I think I just wiped it as soon as I got it. And the main reason why I got it actually was because of these extra expansion cards that you can get. There was a strings ensemble one, which was pretty rare. And it just has some of the nicest pad and string sounds. And I think everything that I was hearing in, old LTJ Booker mixes, and it was all kind of, from the JD800 or JV1080 quite commonly. And that was a little bit more tricky to find. So I had to get someone in Japan to place a bid on an auction site for me and then have that shipped over. And it was, even the card was almost about half the price of what I paid for the synth, basically. So yeah, it was expensive.
Wow. So since you're working mostly in the box, would you consider yourself a sculptor? Like, do you zoom into things a lot? Or do you...
Yeah, I mean, I don't often work with audio, but when I do tend to kind of chop it up and rearrange it and resample things a lot of the time. Most of my early productions, actually, I literally just had several instances of Ultrabeat, which is like a sort of drum sequencer in Logic. And I more or less had like, various different instances of that just running and sequence sounds on it. And then maybe for something more sustained, I would, take a sampler and put a pad on it or whatever, or a string or a VST. But yeah, I mean, for me, the main thing is just vibe and palette of sound. That's like really, really important and number one to me. And I don't think my production processes have changed actually that much. I remember like speaking to Steffi very early on when I started my project, and she was, interested in how I was making music, and I sort of said, and then I was like, yeah, but I want to get this and that and that, and she was like, don't change anything, just do your thing, keep if it works, keep it like that. And that's kind of always stuck with me to a certain extent. And I have expanded my studio a little bit and tried things out, but more often than not, I kind of end up reverting to the old ways of working.
So how do you usually start something?
So I have like a pretty expansive sample library, and I would say like quite a lot of my time is just going through that and trying to find something. And if I find a sound that I like and I have an idea for it, then I might just base the whole track around that and just use that as a starting point. But yeah, other than that, just, writing with beats and loading sounds into Ultra Beat still sometimes, and just trying to find a groove and a rhythm and just move it along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that still in Logic you work? Or is you still work in Logic, yeah?
Yeah, still in Logic. I mean, I often work in Ableton as well when I work with a friend that's tracing circles. So I'm a little bit, I know Ableton a little bit as well. But yeah, mainly Logic.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was asking because I've spent time working on things from scratch in the box, and I'm very often sidetracked by the insane amount of possibilities. So I found that I'm quicker by just jamming things out. Just do things in real time. So you get like this real-time conversation going between yourself and the instrument, and you kind of basically stumble upon things more than that you have to dial them in, if you know what I mean.
Sure, yeah. I think there's also a certain element of when you're working in the box where you can experiment and stumble on things also. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. But whenever I've tried to pick up hardware, and I mean, sometimes I just play with something and record it, and then maybe chop it up and use some resample it basically. But it always ends up being like a bit of a longer process for me to kind of set everything up and get everything working.
Oh, really?
I mean, Logic's, if you know Logic inside out and all the kind of routing of everything, I guess you can set up your studio in a really, easy way, but I've never kind of gone through the lengths to actually really set everything up in place and all the routing and everything. So, things change in the studio as well quite often. I might plug stuff in, plug it out, like store it somewhere, whatever. So it's not really that practical for me to work in that way.
Yeah. What about you, Petra? I see some hardware behind you.
Yeah.
Are you a sort of real-time person, or?
I'm definitely most of a real-time person, and then I edit and process in the box a lot. But also like out of the box. But I mean, yeah, definitely when I create, it's out of the box. I have my biggest love affair is with the Electron machines, the Swedish. I have some over there. I have 3 over there. 2 machine drums and a mono machine.
2 machine drums, yay!
2 machine drums, yeah. I was so worried that one of them should break when I was out playing. So I bought an extra because they are getting super hard to get.
Yeah.
And I've been joking with Nikolai about because I talk about my machine drums all the time.
Okay, well, I'm happy to talk about machine drums. I just actually recently got one. I ignored it for 20 years, and now I got one, and I think it's absolutely amazing.
It's fantastic. Yeah,
it's become my favorite drum box.
And actually,
very, very quickly.
having two, I can say it's double as good. Actually, maybe even more. Maybe even more than having one. It's
okay.
it's
So,
really, really well.
do you actually have a use for what two machine drums can do as opposed to just using one?
I haven't tried doing it live yet, but I'm looking forward to it because then I can have two machine drum kits and then play one of them double time or another time, and they also So I think that's the main, and then also just having the double the possibilities, because sometimes you can get a little bit stuck when you create both kicks and bass lines and percussion and maybe also a few like sampled melodies on one. Then it may maybe not be quite too big enough. But with two, I mean that's a lot of possibilities.
What do you mean big enough? Like the amount of sounds you can get
exactly,
from one?
because it has 16 tracks,
Yeah.
and then it has outputs and inputs. So I often route some percussion sounds into gates and envelope followers and stuff. And
so you use it as a sequencer as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then you pretty quickly run out of tracks on it because it has 16.
Yeah.
And I also like to layer kicks and layer bass. So maybe I can use actually 6 tracks on only kicks and bass.
Okay, well, fair enough. Yeah, then you run out quickly.
And then you run out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't tried that. I mean, I thought the sculpting on that machine is so insane. I've never really felt the need yet to layer things, to be honest.
No, true, but its own percussion sounds are also really, really nice. But when you start layering the stuff and routing it into gates and stuff, then you can also sequence the filter and stuff like that, which makes it it adds a whole another layer, which is really, really nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
And the same with the mono machine, which is also an electron machine, like one of the older ones, a 6-track synthesizer and effect machine, where I also do a lot of layering synthesizers, and then do 2 tracks with synthesizers and 1 track with a gate, or a reverb machine and something like that. And then you have 2 synthesizers in 1 reverb machine, which you can sequence, so you can automate the filter, or automate the reverb or the delays and stuff like that.
Did you update them or one of them to the 0.4 X, whatever it's called, like the one with the synth machines?
The mono machine. I think this one is
no.
latest.
I'm talking about the machine drum again. Sorry.
These are also the latest versions, both of them, because I think there are maybe 4 different versions, and some of them doesn't have a sampler, and some of them doesn't have a library, but these are all the Rolls Royce.
The Rolls Royce machine drum.
Yeah.
Actually, I had one, and then I bought my brother's because he didn't use it as much, and I was like, I need to find one more.
No, I was actually talking about this update. It's an unofficial software update, but it's the one that has extra machines, and they're basically just synths, so you can.
Oh, I did not update to that. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and I didn't take the jump yet, but what I've seen, what it can do it's really interesting.
Okay.
So
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, check it out. It's cool.
I will.
So 2 machine drums and mono machine, and there's a modular, right?
And a modular,
what's that?
And it's a Prophet. A Prophet 08, Dave Smith instruments.
Nice.
And then I have over here, the other way. No, the other way again. Like a Alan Heath digital mixer. And underneath there's some rack gear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. I saw some comment about the massive desk at Sugar Studio. Yeah. Is that a Midas or is it something else?
Yeah, it is a Midas 250 XL. I think it has 52 channels. I think
Yeah.
And I think it's 40. I can't count in my head. 44 or 46 mono channels and 4 stereo channels, and 18 cents. That can both be used as cents and groups, and a lot of amazing features. So yeah, that's my centerpiece. That where everything in my studio is connected to, all my inputs and outputs, and my audio interface is connecting to that desk, and all my gear is connected to patch base and that desk.
Awesome. So it's like you use it for tracking and for mixing. So it goes through the desk on the way in and the way out, or do you do live mixes?
Both. I mean, the first couple of records that I've, or actually all the ones that have been released so far, are, I think 90% of the tracks are one take live jams, so no edits, in the box mixing, because I didn't know how to use Ableton at the time, and I was quite purist. I was like anti-computer. It has to be all gear and only that, and because I was quite obsessed with it, but also, to be honest, because I couldn't really bother to also get into how Ableton was working. So I was just using it to record a stereo track of what I was doing. So so to begin with, I used it for both tracking and mixing. Now, on the records to come, and me and Petra's project, and the few EPs that are coming out later this year and early next year, is a mix of both, where some parts of the record of the tracks are mixed on the desk and the rest in the computer. Something entirely in the computer, but all recorded on the desk at first. So yeah, that's the process, and keep sending things. Excuse me?
No. I was going to say, there is something about sitting behind a massive desk, with all the knobs and faders, makes you feel like an actual producer.
Yeah. I actually just tore my whole studio down last week, and where I'm rebuilding it now, I'm going to have the mixer as in front of me by the speakers, because that's how that will fit the room the best. But in my old studio, it was actually on the side. So I had all the gear in the front and on the right, and then the mixer on the side. So it wasn't ideal to actually mix. Like, if, let's say, that I would have a lot of tracks in the computer and would route them out onto the mixer, it wouldn't be ideal to be sitting like this and having the speakers here. So, but that's how I'm gonna set it up in the new space, and probably also gonna try that out to mix recorded stuff but sent back onto the mixer.
Yeah. Do you also use it for sound design, like run things through it and resample them and stuff like that?
A lot. Yeah. I also have 3 samplers connected to the mixer sent. So I have a EMU, ESI 4000, I think, and an MPC 4000, and then Sonic ASR 88. And,
nice.
And a lot of Eventide machines and different effect processors that I really use the mixing board a lot for that.
Sounds like you can get a lot of flavors there with the way you set it up. Yeah,
a lot, because you can also you can route the sends together. You can send one effect into another effect into another effect into the sampler, and then that sound back on through other effects, and you can sample it in the computer or on the hardware samplers or whatever. It's really a functional setup for any kind of way that I would like to work. Also, when I've been collaborating on some projects with people not living in Denmark, and we've been doing the tracks in Ableton, it's been nice to just be able to process one sound at a time from the computer out and back in. And when I'm doing stuff with Petra, for example, it's nice to be able to multi-track a jam and then process it further afterwards.
Yeah. So how do you actually approach it technically? I mean, you both have studios. Do you meet up in one of them and then work on parts of it, or is it all taking place in one of your studios?
It's all been taking place in my studio, yeah.
Right.
But since I just quit the rental lease, I guess it's called, I needed some fresh air, and I also needed some less expenses now to the current situation of no musical income. So I'm gonna build a new studio, but we managed to finish the first EP before I shut it down, and so we will have to see how it's gonna work from now on. Maybe we're gonna meet in Petra studio. Maybe we're gonna sit somewhere else and work.
Yeah, luckily we managed to like finish all the tracks, so now we only have a little bit of mixing to do.
Right. Okay. I have to mention the cat.
You have to.
She does that when I work. She just comes up here and I have to hold her butt like this, and then I only have one hand to work with. Which is
it a hair? Is it a hairless cat?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I have a Peruvian hairless dog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With hair.
Oh.
So I have to explain it every time I walk. It's like people ask, "What kind of dog do you have?" Well, it's a Peruvian hairless dog, and then you see the look on their face, and then I have to add, with hair because it's in the gene. So some of them get born with still with a fur. Anyway. But thanks for bringing the cat into the frame. It's going to boost the views for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So does she like sounds or get annoyed with high pitched noises and stuff like that? Or?
No, she loves being in here. But she mostly just loves being on my speaker amplifier because it's hot. And,
of course.
Because she's a hairless cat, she goes for the heat all the time.
Yeah.
So she just lies on there all day and sleeps. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's nice to have a companion. I take the dog sometimes in the studio, and
Yeah.
she's very quiet. But surely that should be a Peruvian hair-full dog. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know if there's a name. I think they do have a name for them. I think the breed is called something, and then the ones that are with fur, they have a name for them, but I don't know what it is. But it's like it means something. It's kind of the name means something like that it's not like a real one or like a
fake. Fake dog.
Yeah, a fake one or not a true one. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we love her. Yeah. It's
the only thing annoying by this one is that she likes to chew on cables. So I have to be like over her.
Oh shit! Yeah.
She starts chewing on the cables. I'm like, no.
Okay. Has she ever ruined something?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. So it's not that bad. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this mixing situation, because I'm always interested in people working on desks and what else they do with it, especially things like routings and everything. So the remarkable thing you just said you had your samplers hooked up to your sends. What is that for?
I mean, that makes it possible to sample anything that goes on at the mixer at any time. So I have it has 18 cents. So send 17 and 18 is hooked up to a custom-made box that can split the signal 3 ways. So if the switch is at 1, then it goes to the EMU. If it's at 2, it goes to the MPC. If it's at 3, it goes to the Ensoniq sampler. So at any point, whatever is going on at the mixer, if it's just a simple beat or if it's crazy effects, atmosphere or noise or synth or whatever, you can just turn up the send and it will be routed to the sampler. I can sample that, and it can be done on, of course, any channel. So that makes it extremely flexible, that you can both. I mean, it is after all also sampling to just record it into Ableton. That would be the same, but I can also record that same thing directly into the sampler and then play with that from there.
Do you commonly use certain samplers for different types of sounds?
Yeah, definitely. I think they all have quite different sounds. I think the MPC 4000 is my main drum machine, actually. And I have hooked that up with 2 Electron Digitacts as the sequencers and MIDI mapped the MPC 4000 so that I can control all the necessary parameters directly on the MPC from the Digitact, so I don't have to sit with the stupid wheel and the little screen, but I can just do it from the Electron machines. And that has a very, very hi-fi clean sound. It does have a sound more than the new MPCs, but it's still quite clean compared to, for example, the Emu, which is an older sampler. I think it's from '98 or something. That specific sampler, and it's really. I don't know if I would say gritty, but it's really heavy sounding, really warm, texturized, and you can pitch material down to whatever, pitch it all the way down or all the way up, and it still keeps the integrity of the sound. Whereas with the MPC, I think you can pitch things fairly up and down and it still sounds good, but if you go too far, it'll start sounding grainy and not lose its integrity. But you can create crazy submaterial out of almost any sound on the Emu sampler, for example, because you can pitch it so far down and it still sounds good. And then for the Insonic sampler, it just has crazy looping and layering options that the Emu sampler doesn't have. So you can create almost synthesis sounding stuff out of a snare or whatever, and it has like this fader where you can morph in between sample points, I think it's called, and yeah, it sounds amazing too. But I think they sound quite different, the 3 of them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of mention of Emu samplers recently on the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to. There's a bunch of samplers here, but and there is actually an Emu which is from my studio mate, but I haven't tried it. But I'm becoming more and more intrigued. I used to have one, but I never gelled with it, and I sold it again. And now I'm like, maybe I should give it a spin sometime.
I think they're super nice because, first of all, they're much cheaper to buy than the Akai samplers, for example, because they don't, for some reason, have the same legacy or something. I don't know. I think the Akai samplers have some kind of hip-hop legacy maybe or whatever, so they seem to be higher priced. But I think I bought that Emu sampler 5 years ago for €100 or something.
What?
And
wow.
Yeah, and it just sounds amazing. And I think I got it at a good price. But when I see them now, they're not expensive. I think it's
500-600 or something like that.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
So how did you? Were they? I assume they're still using floppies on those machines, right? Did you have some kind of way to work with faster media to store your sounds and stuff?
Not on that actually, because I tend to with that particular sampler, I tend to just make it, use it, and delete it.
Right.
But because if I make something that I want to save, then my MPC has a USB drive, and I can record it into that and save it there. And the Insonic sampler has a SCSI drive, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my Emu has floppy, but you can upgrade it to be able to take USB or whatever other drives, I think, also if you want to.
So it's not retrofitted for taking USB then? So it's in its original state?
Yeah, it's in the original state with the floppy. And it's also because I think the reason why I didn't upgrade it was because the way that I started working with it was just it's multi-part timbral, so you can have 16 sounds, 16 tracks running at the same time. So often when I was working at a track or two at the same time, then I would just save, let's say, channel 5 to 10 for 5 sounds for this track, and 1 to 5 for this track, and then I would just work on it for a while, and when the tracks were done, I would just delete it.
Yeah, I like the attitude. Just use it, and once it's basically printed, you can forget about it. Don't even worry about the archiving. Yeah. I got one of those old S612 samplers. The really early Akai ones. It's the 12-bit one, and it does have some way of archiving with there's some floppy drive kind of thing. It's not even floppy. It's like earlier than that even. Double-sided discs. So in theory, you can store things, but I never use it. It's like I do the same as you. Just record something into it and then use it, and then switch the machine off, and it's gone forever.
Yeah. Also, if there's a sound that you really like, then I just record it into the computer and
yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly.
And then you have it.
Yeah. Cool. Do you use Petra, your machine drums as samplers as well?
Only a few times I've loaded samples in there, but it's also you need to use this special Electron USB device to get it over there, and it's so slow, and there's literally no room. It's like I think there's space for like maybe a minute of samples or something like that.
Well, that's in sampling territory, not that bad,
Yeah,
I mean, historically.
Historically, no, but I also have an Octatrack.
Okay, yeah.
So I use that for sampling and for loading samples and stuff like that. But I haven't used it that much lately because I mostly synthesize stuff and use that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've once tried it, the loading the samples, and it is very slow, but it is worth it in some way because, and I also like the fact that it makes you really sit down and think about what you are going to transfer because it's such a hassle.
Yeah.
So you are really
more selective.
You were really picky with the things that you actually are going to transfer, and I think that's half the fun. Just imagine. Basically, you're imagining in your head what could the sample sound like when it's inside. What could I do with it?
True.
And so it's even worth just transferring over maybe 2 or 3 sounds. Just to see how it works, and then just pick them carefully. I mean, I like that kind of limit on
you also
machines,
won't really have room for more than 2 to 3 sounds.
That's true. Yeah.
But I mean, the machine drum sampler is really nice for like sampling internally, because it can sample the whole machine, or it can sample the inputs in the machine. So like if you have a really nice percussion track, you can sample that into the sampler and then use that.
Yeah.
And fuck it up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's the machine drum is really good for fucking up stuff.
Yeah.
Like
you can have it
mid-zeros, mid-millennium machines. Like I've also tried to have these add-on MIDI controllers, and it's some of the software for it is so old and they're not getting updated, so you can run it on newer computers. So I have an old MacBook Air that I can update the firmware on my MIDI controller for the machine drums, because the newer computers won't support it.
Yeah, keep the old computer just for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I haven't got around doing that kind of trick where you basically have it chew in its own outputs in real time, because you can like with I've done it with the Octatrack, because it's easy to do there, I guess. But I'm gonna try it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's great for that. Yeah.
It gets very glitchy very quickly, but I mean, and it's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's see if there's anything going on in the comments, because we are doing our best to ignore you again. There's a question about, for all of us, are any of us using sequences to arrange your tracks, or is it more about free flow creation?
I mean, all of the Electron machines have their own sequencer in them. So I mean, mostly I use one of the machine drums as the master, and then I MIDI link them. But then I can still use the sequencers on the other machines yeah. So I mean, I use sequences all the time.
Yeah, but do you have them run in real time and then just change patterns in real time, or do you actually use the song mode and stuff?
No, I don't use the song mode as much because it takes so much time to create a song.
Yeah.
But I use the pattern changes a lot. Like for a live set, I maybe actually use all of the patterns and all of the banks in my master machine, and then I link them. So when I change the pattern on one of them, they all change the pattern. So
Right.
I can. So I mean, that's definitely also what the song mode does. The song mode is just an automated version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same for me. I also use the Electron machines as the sequences, and the Digitags can't use song mode, so they can only you can only just do you can do pattern change, so it runs through I think up to 4 patterns and repeat itself, and then you can change the patterns manually. But I think depending on what kind of music I'm making, a lot of times it's enough for me to just have 1, 2, or 3 patterns, because I have 2 of them, so it's 16 tracks, and you can still change stuff, mute and unmute stuff manually on the fly, and mute and unmute steps, and I think it's quite enough for what I'm doing often.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, these days I usually do the same, just have things run, change things on the fly manually. But I've also done like actual songwriting, or like arranging in song mode in certain, I used to do that in my MPC or in the or in R8 even.
You did it on the MPC.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
On a 3000. Yeah, it's easy. It's quite easy, but it's kind of it's a different mindset, because you think you basically write your stuff with the idea that you were going to chain them to chain the patterns afterwards. So you kind of do little sort of fills in whatever in the end of the pattern or before, stuff like that. So you're more sort of conscious about how the song's actually going to be written out instead of just letting it happen. I wouldn't say it's better or anything, but it's a different mindset, a different process.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, these days I'm generally too impatient for that. There was a question about your percussion, Sugar. Maybe you want to talk about that? How the percussion on "Keep the Wounds Clean" came into being.
Yeah, that track is actually one of the tracks that are arranged and made in the box, but with hardware sounds for the material. So that was when I was starting experimenting with editing and cutting up audio in Ableton, and it was one of the first tracks I did that way. I think maybe the track me and Anita did together was the first one, because it had to be like that, because she was in Paris and I was in Copenhagen. But this track, I think, was the first one where I, for example, started experimenting with breakbeats, because I've been quite obsessed with a lot of the old drum and bass, jungle, and also the more extreme, like Venetian snares, affix, shit mat, and all that stuff, and been obsessed with how the fuck did they actually do this stuff. both of course with the hardware, but also with the software that was available at the time. So I started trying for myself to see how can I use these breakbeat samples and cut them up, effect them, and arrange them in a way so it sounds like my material instead of just a breakbeat sample running over the track. And so that percussion was basically made out of breakbeats that were chopped into like layer 5 breakbeats on top of each other, have one to be the one that you listen to, and the other ones are muted. And then you start chopping out hits on the ones that are muted and throwing them into the one that is not muted. So it becomes like this mutant breakbeat made out of 4 or 5 breakbeats, and then when you start to get the rhythm going with setting the envelopes on each individual hit over 2 or 4 bars, then start processing it and saturating it and giving it effects, and then cut it again. And so it's really like a process that took quite a while, but and it's a process that I'm much more confident in now and much more, I'd say, practiced in now. So it goes a lot faster. But at the time, I would say sit for like 3 weeks and figure out like how the fuck do I do this?
Yeah, it's always funny because sometimes you wonder how the hell did they do this, and you never find out, of course. And even if you would ask the producer that did it, they would say, maybe I used this or that, and they don't quite recall how they did it.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we all know if you do something in the studio, in the end, you kind of know how you got there, but it was never the plan. You kind of kind of twisting and turning to kind of sort of squeeze it out of what the situation or the gear, without a very structured method in advance. So it's often the experimentation that leads to the most interesting results. Let's try this and see what happens, and then it never turns out the way you want, but it sometimes ends up being interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna bring in a question to myself. The Patterns remix, the drums were actually done on the MPC, because actually the remix was something I did for to be able to play it live. So I needed to have something inside the MPC, and so
Which one?
The 3000.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually took that on the road, man. Believe it or not. Later I switched to in a huge box, breaking my back.
Like on the plane.
Even that. Yeah.
Shit! Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but basically the drums were just drum sounds from I don't know what, but they were all ran through the ARP 2600 preamp, and just basically distorted the fuck out of them through the preamp, and had some sort of FM on the filter, blah blah blah, and and then resampled them into the MPC. That's basically it's very simple, but it was like the live version, which later I decided to release. So I was actually wondering, Luke, how you approach things when you work in the box. Do you start things in a loop? Are you basically sculpting things as a loop, and then sort of later on, because we were talking about sequencing, right? And if you're
I use sequences as well, but virtual sequences, I guess.
Okay.
So all the 99 sounds are done in the drummers on D16, and I sequence in the sequence on board there, and I'm still using Ultrabeat fairly regularly, and sequence all the sounds in that way. It's basically just the Logic drum computer where you can load your own samples, and you can have some synth sculpting stuff, but it's not really that great for that. I just use it to load in sounds. So I always work sequencing in a kind of Roland style 16-step. And that's kind of my preference, really. I don't really like to use the piano roll and the DAW. But recently I started sequencing more synth sounds using a plugin called HY Seq SEQ16. And I'm really enjoying using that. And there's quite a lot of possibilities. I think it's kind of modeled similarly to the Mac 16 sequencer, DOFA one. And then some lanes will be just audio, and I'll just kind of slice and cut up audio, and then some lanes I'll have a sampler, put sounds in there and play them on the keyboard or whatever. But for me, the kind of in the box thing is sort of where I feel comfortable. I have kind of sequenced stuff on hardware before. I had like a rhythm like a couple of years ago, and I just find having everything in one place a bit more fluid for my workflow, basically.
So how do you get from? Oh, sorry. Go.
I was just asking, do you use, because one of the things that I find hard sometimes when working on projects in Ableton is if you don't have MIDI controllers or a good, opportunities to hand, what do you say, like
manual interface.
Yeah. Do you have any MIDI controllers or stuff like that? No. So it's all
none
drawn?
whatsoever. No, I mean, sometimes, occasionally, if I want to kind of get like a more natural feel for something, I might plug in just like the tractor controller that I've got that is just sort of sitting around in a drawer, and just, maybe change the filter or record the automation of a delay or a reverb maybe. But yeah, mostly if I'm doing any automation, I'll do it actually creating nodes, points, and also just have different plugin instances that I can kind of automate the whole process for me.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm wondering about though is, I mean, I've done stuff the way you describe often enough, and what I always get stuck with is once I got a really nicely sculpted loop and all the layers sort of worked out. How do you get from that
into an arrangement?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really. I guess it's more of like an old kind of dub kind of mixing technique. So I'll just have the mixer with all the channels, and I'll just kind of get a feel for everything, muting things, just getting a sense of the loop. And then when I get to a point where I kind of have an idea about all the different parts of the arrangement, just by kind of improvising, muting things, maybe doing some volume changes, things like that. And that's the moment. I have to get to that moment first where I'm really comfortable playing around with it before I can then take it into an arrangement. And yeah, from that point, actually, because I've already kind of played with the track, the arrangement process is normally just laying down all the kind of brickwork of it is normally pretty quick. And then from there, it's kind of just making all the transitions and, doing all the fade in and creating all the nodes. And that takes a lot more time, and, I can be quite anal about going about it, basically, and just keep making sure everything's like perfect and that I'm fully happy with it. But yeah, normally just laying down the brickwork of the arrangement itself, the bare bones to it is pretty quick.
Okay. And so you basically kind of practice, or you sort of find the settings that could that work together, with like some tracks muted and some tracks unmuted, and then you keep that sort of in mind when you start sort of laying it out over the timeline, or do you actually record those?
No,
those sessions as well?
I don't record it, because I often feel that kind of you end up changing it anyway at some point. So I just kind of go along step by step, kind of re-listening to it, working my way through from start to finish, basically.
Okay, and then there comes the final sort of smoothing things out process, exactly. and that can take ages, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I as much as I love it, sometimes I really like to dive into things and completely sort of finishing stuff up in the box and zoom into all these details, and but there's always the danger of getting further and further away from the original idea. Is there something? Is there something you have? Is there a strategy you use to sort of keep things from happening like that? Because
I mean, quite often, you can get a sense for like a loop, and you could be listening to it and have a certain idea about how a track might kind of develop and play out during the arrangement. But then actually, when you start doing that, you end up kind of reaching some points where you're like, oh, okay, this hasn't quite worked. Maybe I need to introduce a new part here or something like that. But yeah, going back, using different kind of plugins and having things kind of automated, I kind of try and like to get to a point where the track is sort of right in itself in a way. Things are kind of moving around a little bit, and then it makes the kind of arrangement process a bit more straightforward. But with my like music in general, I've never got caught up too heavily in trying to make complex patterns or overcomplicate, slicing audio too much and things like that. I've more just concentrated on having a collection and a palette of sounds that I kind of feel confident and that I can relate to and I have some sort of connection with. And that's kind of been the main focus in my production, really, more than, improvisation or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, so you basically know what you're gonna do. You kind of you basically put yourself on a path to the direction you want to end up in, instead of losing yourself in the endless.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always planned out. Obviously, I mean, part of the whole process of creating the loop. I mean, I don't always have like a strong idea of what that loop will sound like, but being involved in that and working with it, you kind of, in your intuition, you kind of let that kind of guide you how the track is going to turn out in a way. But then there'll be some, go-to things that I'm familiar with, which I know that might work well, that I'll kind of fall back on and rely on.
Do you reference your tracks, or do you have some kind of way to decide when your mix is optimized? Like being against other stuff you've done, or maybe even other people's music, play them out in a club as a something.
Not like really. That. I mean, I probably should do that more often, to be honest, because it probably give me a bit more confidence in my mixing abilities and be able to cross-reference things. But I think when I get to a point with a track, I'll normally hit up a couple of very close musician friends that I have and get a bit of criticism from them, and that can maybe give me a little bit of input at that point. And I think that's a really important thing to have a couple of people that you can be quite open and close to, and just let them kind of have a bit more insight into your music than perhaps other people might. And I find that kind of really helpful, and that helps me to kind of get to a position where I can finalize things. But I'm never happy with the final mix down like I think most people are. Yeah.
I feel the same.
What do you feel is missing in your abilities there? What are the most common things when you're not happy with a mix? What is it you don't like about it? Is it dynamics
it's just trust in an acoustic environment, I think. What it comes down to. I mean, most of the time I'm working here at home and I have my studio set up, and obviously can't play loud, and I've got some treatment to an extent, but it's not the environment where I can just pump it out really loud and get like a full impression of the full frequency spectrum. So I do have the opportunity to go and check my music in other studios, like Simon, who I work with Chasing Circles on. I've got access to that studio and I know the room a little bit more, but then again, it's not, nothing's ever perfect. No environment is ever perfect. But I think, maybe just trying to listen to listen on different systems and giving you better impression about where the balance is and mixes. But I have more faith down at that studio where I work with Simon than I do kind of at home, but it doesn't stop me from creating as such. But when it comes to maybe the final mix down, then it can be complicated.
I mean, I was expecting this, because I've yet to meet the first person on all of these chats that is confident about their mix down. Everybody's always trying. It's always a trade-off, isn't it? It's always, it's you have to leave some. You have to leave something to make something else work, and trade it off against something.
And I mean, a lot of the music I really like is all. It's never been. A lot of the music that I'm into is never engineered to perfection. There's always going to be some sort of aspect to it which has a bit of a more amateur or raw kind of feeling, and that's something that I also really enjoy and like. And I don't just want to be, spending all my time kind of procrastinating over how well a mix down is. But it can really make or break a track, definitely. Yeah. And the value of it is really important.
Yeah. I mean, I would also say, like, often it's also like an aesthetic of a time. Like, if you listen to techno and trance from the 90s, if you would listen to it from a producer perspective of today, a lot of it you would say, this sounds like shit. But I mean, the whole aesthetic of it sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. That's one of the big draws.
I mean, also, like, if you look back on some productions from now, if you look back on in 20 years, some of it you might say, wow, they produced really weirdly at that time. So I mean, it's all relative, no?
Absolutely. It's also really hard to integrate classic music in a DJ set, for example, purely from that point where today we have better engineers maybe, or more tools, and we can achieve different things, but there's still that charm, that's there from back in the day, and that a lot of people feel very drawn to.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I mean, it is part of the whether you're happy with a mix or not. I don't necessarily mean getting it as polished as possible, but more like Petra says, just reaching the aesthetic that you're after. And that's there's still always trade-offs. There's still always decisions you have to make to get it the way you want it to sound like. Petra, you mentioned before you are layering things and stacking things a lot. Why do you do that? I mean, are you not happy with like a single kick drum, or is it part of the sound design?
Yeah, I think so. Also because sometimes it makes it so much more difficult to mix, probably. But I feel like I always want to experiment on the sounds, and maybe it's, as you say, I'm not tilfreds. I'm not satisfied with a regular kick. I mean, it's just.
Let's talk about kick drums, people. I just saw one. Weird, I just saw a comment earlier about Sugar's kick drums. So maybe we can share some kick drum secrets.
Those are really nice.
I mean, I always layer them usually out of 3, maximum 4 components. The main kick is for the most part made out of a big kick library. Me and my good friend Repro, who has the Romantic label, we made together out of some kicks that he originally made of a modular synth he had a long time back. And I guess that I can't say for sure, but I'm just going to say it on his behalf, but I think he made them with an envelope you could set to exponential, I guess, so you could set the curve on how the sweep would be, and with 1 or 2 good oscillators, either with some FN or not, make some really good synthesized kick sweeps. And he made a bunch of them, and those we have been manipulating and processing further over the years, layering them with different transients, or a really really tight snare set good in the mix or whatever. And he have made some further than he's using, and I have done too. But with those kicks, I always use that and a bass component, a bass roll component, and a sub component. And the bass roll is usually on step 3 and 4, or 2, 3, and 4 with different velocity settings. And the sub element is a big sub bank I have made out of samples from a microphone that I have, where I've just been blowing into the microphone. So
I remember when I came to Copenhagen, you showed me this.
I actually use Nikolai's blows as well.
Yeah, so it creates this rumble of distortion from the microphone capsule or whatever. So because it creates just a whole frequency spectrum of rumble, and you can set the filter on whatever setting you want.
Really earthy sort of sound, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And then I adjust those three components together with the fitting envelopes, so the kick rings out when the bass hits come in, and the sub is either directly on one and blows together with the kick, or comes as like a sweep up, so it gets like this pulling sounds, so like kind of, and and sometimes I then add further, like later in the mixing process, I then can maybe add another transient to the kick. And it doesn't matter if I do it in the box or in the mixer. If I think that the kick doesn't punch through enough, I can have just like a snare really, really low and filter down in the mix.
So where does the combining take place then? Is that inside the computer? Because you can easily, if you layer things, you can get like drifting or phasing problems, or how do you keep it tight? How do you keep it all sort of sample accurate?
It has never been a problem for me, neither. Obviously not on the computer because it's sample accurate, but it hasn't been a problem on the mixer either because I set the envelopes to fit. So either if there is a slight MIDI drift or whatever, it's never an issue. So like, let's say the kick rings out, and then the bass hit comes in when that is ringing out, and then the sub, if that is on one together with the kick, then I just make sure that it's filtered enough, and that the the very first transient of the sub has like a slight decay. So when the kick hits, then the sub comes, but it is put so and EQ'd and filtered so that it doesn't create any issues.
And is this all happening as like a sound design sort of moment in the studio, or and then you archive them for later, or are you basically tweaking all these variations during? Sorry,
I do it every time from scratch. Or what do you mean?
Yeah. But what I mean is it part of the writing process, or like are you changing these variables while you are adding other sounds as well, or are you just designing a kick just as by itself and as its own thing before you?
No, I'd say both. I mean, I always keep it open so I can, because I think it depends really much on what percussion or other grooves you add on to the. If it's, let's say, techno for 4x4, I think it also depends like what comes in later, like how does the synth roll, how does the percussion go. So I never, let's say, resample it into one sound. I always keep it separate. So like, okay, now the bass roll is a bit off in comparison to the percussion or whatever.
Yeah, okay,
so then
you can still tweak the variables while you are. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, because I do respect people who spend so much time sort of sculpting their sounds, but I also know a lot of people, or spoken to a lot of people who design drum sounds without context, and I always found that a bit, I don't know, I don't see the point to do that myself, because you never know in what context it's going to end up with, so
absolutely.
So you can design an amazing kick drum or percussion sound or whatever, but and spend a lot of time on it, but if you don't know how it's going to interact with other sounds, you might want to keep some of the variables open to a later stage.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I normally just choose one sound, but then just process it. I mean, most of the time it just comes out of the Gold Baby Tape sample pack, 909 bass drum, or from the drummers on, where I can have more flexibility to tweak and repitch it and so on by that. And I think sometimes I'm laying with a sub, but most of the time not, and just processing the hell out of it, compression and EQ, and trying to get it sound as big as possible.
What are some of your favorite tricks to treat your kick then?
I quite like processing the kick with the Decimal, which is another D16 plugin, bit crusher, MPC 60 setting, and tweaking that a little bit. And then, using VCA compressor, maybe like I've got like a Vertigo emulation. And like transient designers, SPL transient designers, need EQs, console sort of emulation EQs, even some wave stuff like the VEQ4 I think is really, really nice for kick drum specifically. I don't really use it for any other use apart from just one or two of the bands on that EQ from waves. But just stacking up the plugins and just giving it more power. Sometimes the Vogue, little Labs Vogue, if it needs to get really, really heavy sort of sub feeling out of it.
And do you wait?
That's more or less it.
Yeah, well, it sounds good. I think that's probably that's closer to how I would do it. I'm too lazy to to get stacking stuff and everything. I mean, inside drum machines, it's cool. Some drum machines are designed to layer stuff. Like the sounds are composed of different components, and then you can sort of change the relationship and to sculpt them. But I've never really done that inside a DAW or anything. I don't know why. It's just I just go with one sound and then just fuck it up like you do, make it fit. So are you also tweaking the variables on the sound design of your drum sounds or kick sounds during?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you don't start with a kick and then make that perfect and then add the rest. It's part of the process of the sound design.
It will end up changing along the way. Most of the time, I have to repitch it or change the decay or the tuning or something.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe Petra, any kick secrets from your side except for the stacking?
Yeah, well, I usually like stack a couple of kicks and maybe pitch them differently, so they give like a small melody or like a dissonance together. And then I like to run it through my Sherman filter bank, and that often adds like a little distortion and also a little tone to it. And and then I EQ and compress inside the box. Yeah, and also sometimes, like for example, if I make a kick that then suddenly doesn't fit the arrangement, just fiddle with the audio inside, like make it shorter. And then I also actually use Nikolai's the blows in the microphone as a sub. Yeah, I got them from him. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of sound design going on in the way you all work. I was wondering, since both Petra and Sugar have a history of music which is not techno, are there any things that you learned in those days and from those other methods that you bring into your current work, like that play a role in the way you work now?
I think for me it would only be to not be afraid to make a lot of noise at first, in a way, because I think what I remember when I wanted to start making electronic music, I was actually quite arrogant in my mind. And I thought, okay, I've been making music for so long, and when I was listening to some of the techno that I really like, I was like, this cannot be hard to make this. I mean, seen from a I don't know, some sort of standpoint. And when I started making electronic music, I realized that it was just basically scrapping everything that I mean, of course, there's some melodic stuff and some. I both played drums and guitar and stuff, and of course, there's some rhythmic stuff that I obviously learned from playing the drums that I could use, and some of the melodic stuff from playing and guitar, whatever, that I could also use. But I think that I had to relearn everything pretty much again, because I think that it's so much, like making electronic music is so much a combination of many disciplines. It's not just playing an instrument, and it's not just being a technician, and it's like everything combined that makes the music good. Because you can write a really interesting rhythm or create a really interesting melody, but if it sounds absolutely like shit, it doesn't matter, you know. And but you can also be amazing at sound design or making a good mix, but if you can't the other things, then it doesn't matter either. And so I think what I often think about coming from punk it has more been in the context of the approach to experimentation and not being too stuck up with like, okay, it has to be this genre, it has to sound exactly like this, but be open to throw in different things and just fuck around and make a lot of noise and try to contain it afterwards. Let's say.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've worked with plenty of musicians who play real instruments, and I think the thing with making stuff in the studio, as you know, and do like electronic music, is it's a bit more open ended, you know. So instead of I mean, you're basically thinking of structure very late on in the process, you know, instead of you know, it's not song based or anything. It's more like setting an atmosphere, finding some aesthetic.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Finding a vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Petra?
Yeah, I think a lot in structure from the beginning. Actually, I think that's also something I take with me from making like weird pop music. Like I always have a sense of structure right from the start, and it's also like I think it's something that's just in my body now that I've done it so much, and I can't really get rid of it. Not that I want to, but it's just I really think a lot about where I wanted to go next when I start out doing something, and also when I record stuff, I instantly think about how this next part fits with the first one. Yeah.
Right, so you're kind of planning ahead and doing things on purpose, instead of just letting them happen.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's also maybe comes a little bit from I also been playing a lot of like improvised jazz music, which also is a lot about atmosphere, but it's also a lot about, you know, playing with maybe 4 other people, and you need to play for an hour and you need to make it interesting, but everything is improvised. So you actually need to think about like what a form of some sort, a form of the song or a form of the concert. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah, improvisation is way more about letting it happen in the moment, but also keeping in mind what already happened and sort of keep that in mind to kind of choose the direction where it goes next.
Yes, and if you do the same thing for an hour, it's not going to be interesting.
No.
even if what you're doing is like the most interesting thing you've ever done, if you do it for an hour, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah. I think there was a cat sighting again. I'm distracted from it. Tell me about those improvisations, because I'm really into improvising these days. And what I like about it the most is that anything can happen, you know. So you basically start with nothing, and while you are playing, you are as much a spectator of what's happening as much as the creator. And so basically you are always in the now, you know, always in the moment. It's a sort of a really hyper-focused state that I really enjoy. You know, there's nothing you can do except for accepting what's going on and make the best of it. You know, it's a whole different way. It's much like DJing, but even more intense, because if you do nothing, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
When you're DJing, you have time to think, or
yeah.
or even when you're playing live with electronic instruments, you can take your hands off and it will still be running.
Yeah.
But if you're actually improvising and playing instruments live, it's it's a real time in the moment thing. So is that something you use still in your in the way you make music?
I mean, in the way I make music, yes. But when I play live with electronic instruments, I don't really do it. But when I prepare a live set, I do it a lot. I don't really know why I don't do it live. Maybe I'm not confident enough to do that. But I've done it a lot with like acoustic instruments. But yeah, I think it's something that's like in my DNA now. So when I compose, that's a really big part of it. Or when I prepare a live set. But when I'm doing a live set, I have a lot planned out, and not everything, of course, but a lot. Yeah.
So in effect, in your case, you could say that your instruments are your other band members then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I like to keep stuff open because it adds some unexpectedness to the music. That's always makes it more interesting for me.
Yeah, risk is definitely a necessary component if you do a live set.
Yeah.
If it would be too easy, it would get boring really, really quickly. Yeah. And if it's too difficult, you can dig yourself in a hole and never get out of it. But if you find the right balance between accepting that there is risk and having some stuff you can rely on, that usually creates the most interesting things, because you have to work for it, and people that comes across. It keeps you more focused.
It definitely brings some energy into the room.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really noticeable. Yeah, you can easily tell when you see people play live and they are kind of, pushing one song to the next and playing things in the same order or whatever. I mean, you can make it interesting by mixing it live or whatever, and have that sort of. But there also always needs to be some element of improvisation added to the thing to make it actually interesting.
Yeah, and I actually never play my own songs when I play live. It's always like 100% new material. I don't.
Oh, you mean like music you haven't released before, just stuff that you improvise with on the fly? Yeah. What does your live set look like? Let me guess. There's a machine drum.
2 machine drums.
I haven't played live with 2 yet, but I want to. But yeah, machine drums and a mixer. Actually, I recently made a new live setup where I use a digital rack mixer, which is really nice for carrying it around.
What's that?
A digital rack mixer, just a mixer.
Oh, okay,
in
right.
A rack.
Okay.
And then I can mix on the iPad, and then I can store presets so that I can load different routings, and then I have like a few effects that I can route the different machines into, and a reverb pedal, often a filter, and compressor for side chaining also, and then 2 or 3 electron machines. That would be a live set.
So the electron machines are the place where you have the improvisation.
Yeah.
Or is it maybe in the mixing as well?
No, not so much in the mixing. No, mostly in the machines, and I can mute and unmute and make melodies on the fly.
So you have the running in step mode, and okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because all of the electron machines have their own sequences, and then I often route a few synthesizers into a gate, and then I can, play with the filter on the gate. So I have 2 synthesizers playing different parts into one gate, and I can play with filters or reverb or delay. And then I also, with the digital mixer, I can route it into like a physical filter and a reverb pedal, and then into, for example, the compressor, and then sidechain it from the kick. And that gives a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Have you played live, Luke?
No, never. Only DJ'd.
Would you want to?
I mean,
have you considered it?
I have considered it in the past, but don't for the moment. Probably not. Maybe at some point, if I develop the Chasing the Circles projects more with Simon, then that could be a possibility. But yeah, as you know, I'm not like a huge gearhead with loads of different equipment, and Logic is not the best kind of DAW for kind of working on a live set in the computer. So yeah, it's not really something that I've explored fully, to be honest. But yeah, I think some people do a really great job doing it. You know, full hardware setups. I remember when I was really enjoying some of the stuff that Scudge were doing in their early days performing. I had a kind of idea of maybe doing something similar, but yeah, I'm quite happy with DJing, really. I mean, even when I DJ, I don't often play my own music. I really enjoy playing other people's music.
I don't blame you, man, because the lugging the gear around part of playing live is it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But the part of playing live is really nice, though.
Yeah. What about you, Sugar? Playing live?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot, and more actually recently. But my thing have always been that my studio have been so excessive in a way, and such a big combination of so many things playing together, creating the sound that I have. And
well, you could just put like a 56 channel Midas on your rider.
Exactly. I actually joked about that with Petra, saying that when we're going to play live, we're gonna do the full U2 set up with a lot of big vans and
you could just say no Midas, no show, man.
Yeah, exactly.
We just need to not carry anything ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've been thinking about how I could do it, and I've been thinking about, as you said, bringing the MPC on tour. I thought about, should I maybe bring my MPC on tour and a computer and a small modular synth or a mono synth or whatever. But yeah, I've also thought about, should I just bring the computer and a few other things. But every time I've thought about it, I've come to the conclusion that I haven't found the right way of trying to make the sound that I have in a live situation. I think, of course, it could be done. I could also just commit to a smaller setup, some Electron machines, a synth, some effects, and that's it, and then just play along with that. But
well, the question is, does it have to resemble what you are releasing? Does it need to be?
No, it doesn't. But that has been my point. Yeah, it's a good point, and it's also what I've been thinking. But I just previously have come to the conclusion that I don't know if I would enjoy it in the same way, because what I enjoy is a lot in the studio is to make the perfect sound design thing actually happen with the gear that I have. And I often feel that when I'm working on just a few machines at the same time, I often tend to feel that I can't make it sound as full or as good as I wanted to. And also I've been seeing a lot of people playing live where I've been finding it uninteresting, just bringing along a few machines and playing live, and I've just been kind of waiting for the DJ to get back on.
Wow. That sounds harsh, man.
But not always. But but a lot of times I actually have. But of course, I've seen some amazing live sets out there. But it's usually people who have really worked it out, like in a way that this works for me. And to be honest, I just haven't done that for myself. But I think the idea is really interesting, and I have been thinking about how I could incorporate it in a way that would make sense for me.
Well, if you're used to being in the studio, having so much options on a massive desk, if you would have like a shrunken down version of it, but still keep the method the same, like I don't know, 16 channels of inputs or whatever. I mean, just I've seen many shows where people were basically playing loops of stuff and then made the whole arrangement and performance on a desk, like dub style, basically, like the dub guys did, and it can be really, really exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard because you never know how the room is going to sound like. You can do a sound check, but then you walk in at night with a room full of people and it sounds completely different. So it's hard to be very accurate with specific sounds, but at the same time, it's part of the fun, I guess, just to make it sound right in the moment. Just make that the performance.
Of course, and it's not to sound harsh either with what I'm saying, but it's just I think I've been previously caught up so much in building this machine as I see it, from where I can make the music that I want, and when I've been trying to degrade it in a way and trying to narrow it down, I always feel that some parts is missing. But I think if I would want to play live at a point, I think it would be a mission on its own, like trying to pick and choose the right components and make a live setup situation at home and then make it work. Because of course it can work. I just haven't spent enough time on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, these days Sorry, go.
Oh, I was going to ask you, do you have a different rig for your live show so you don't have to kind of deconstruct your studio constantly?
Well, I've actually not played live for quite a while, but what I usually do is when I DJ or when I play in a club, I usually run a Tractor, and I basically use it as a sampler, like a 4-deck looper, and then I have an Octatrack on the side which I run in step mode, and I use that to program extra stuff over top. So basically, I create my basic sort of sound and atmosphere on the computer, and then I make it sound more like me using my drums, and then I use some small pedals, like some of the Auto boxes, to flavor the sounds a bit. So in a sense you could say that it's live, but it is relying on some DJing things as well, like it's not always my own tracks that I'm playing. I do have a lot of sort of stems that I make, like noises or atmospheres that are part of the library that I can choose from. Actually, what I like about that way is that it is, first of all, it is manageable, so I don't have to bring shitloads of stuff, and it still enables me to flavor things in such a way that it still sounds way more sort of aesthetically stylized than just DJing and relying on other people's production. But I do like the sort of open-ended improvisation way that is coming from the DJ part. So you don't play down a list. You basically got all your sounds you ever put on that laptop with you, and it's basically just, you never know what's going to happen. It's always like you choose the parts and the ingredients along the way, basically. So there's no fixed set, and you can go in all kinds of directions and you can be very flexible and sort of tailored towards what you find in the room when you arrive. So it's sort of like a hybrid best of both worlds situation. But during the downtime during COVID, I did a lot of live improvisation in the studio, and I would love to continue that when we get back in clubs. But I'm still figuring out what to bring, because here it's easy. I could just have some massive piece in my studio to improvise with, but obviously that's not going to be easy to travel with. So but I mean, we live in a time where pretty much there's so much choice of sort of miniature tabletop sequencers, Eurorack stuff, sort of mini synths, with. So I would probably assemble some of that and ditch the computer altogether and just rely on some, maybe a machine drum, an octatrack, and some pedals and a little synth or something like that. I don't know.
I have to ask a question. I have to ask a question on the octatrack because that has been a big. That's been a big hurdle for me because I used to have it. I use it as a sequencer, but I really think that it sounds awful as a sampler. How do you use it? Do you like the sound of the octatrack?
Explain.
But when you play live, you can't really hear. When you play live in a club, you can't hear all that hi-fi stuff. I mean, the samples doesn't have to sound like Spitze,
No, but it's not necessarily the hi-fi stuff. My problem with the octatrack as a sampler is that I think if you have a sample that sounds good and you play it from the octatrack, it sounds good. But as soon as you use, or for me, as soon as I start using it as a drum machine and I start manipulating the sample, tweaking it, pitching it, using the filter, I think it's one of the samplers that I've owned the worst sounding of them all, actually. And I love the sequence and I love the functionality. I've often been joking about I would love like an EMU sampler, an MPC sounding sampler with the octatrack interface. Because I just think it is so amazing the way the workflow, how everything works, the fader, you can crossfade between settings and all this stuff is amazing. But I just think that the sound integrity of that piece, I'm just like, what is going on?
I don't know. To me, it sounds great because the way I use it is it's quite simple. I don't really manipulate sounds on the fly too much because I've got like external effects which I can use. Actually, I use the octatrack also as an effects processor. So I've got two of the channels as effects machines, and then they are fed by the auxiliary sense on my mixer. And then I have some things assigned to the crossfader to kind of dial in the effects in a way that I think is useful for the moment. But as far as the drum sounds, I think they blend very nicely with the sound coming from the laptop. I used other samplers before, and I always thought they were actually detached from the sound of Traktor because they sounded like a separate layer all the time. They never really blended. And as soon as I started to use the octatrack, I thought it blended much more nicely. So and I wouldn't I wouldn't quite agree. I think the octatrack is a very powerful sound sculpting tool. The only thing is that it is so specific and it does have its sound. It does have a sound. And if you compose an entire track inside it, to me that sounds boring. So it's all the same. It's sort of all the same sort of sound manipulation. So in the studio, I would use it for just one sound, for example, and just really tweak, dial it in the way I want, and attach whatever parameters to the fader to manipulate it, or just to do it live and not bother with the fader at all. And then just use it as a single element in a sort of broader palette, and for that it works fine. But I would never, and it's of course you're limited also by the limited amounts of outputs. Yeah. So even if you do use the two stereo outs, you're still limited to just that. So it's capable of making something entirely inside, but that's not how I want to use it, because I would agree with you on that it's it sounds a bit singular. You don't really get the depth and the difference in texture. Even if you sample things with texture built in, you're always going to end up with that octatrack sound. And to me, that's too limited as a palette for an interesting sounding track. So. But it's a crazy powerful machine.
It is indeed.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. We arrived at the octatrack debate. For some reason, it always comes up. It's a love-hate relationship. Most people, I've never met a single person that uses the octatrack the same. Everybody has their own use and their own kind of workflow with it. And most people actually struggle with the interface more than with the sound, you know.
Oh, yeah. I would love to see a sampler sounding like the old samplers did with the Octatrack interface.
Yeah. Right.
Really.
Okay, so the interface is fine for you. It's just the sound.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other Octatrack users here? Luke, have you ever tried one?
Not an Octatrack, but I did have a Rhythm for a bit. And yeah, the menu dive in, and I did find when I was loading, I was mainly using it to load in my samples, and I did find that I wasn't quite happy with the sound that it produced, and the whole process of kind of moving samples through and like menu dive in and moving them over was pretty long-winded. But yeah, so it wasn't for me at the end of the day, actually.
You didn't gel with it.
Yeah, the Electron gear is not for me, I don't think. But yeah, as you said, they're super powerful tools, bits of equipment, and the sequencer capabilities are the best out there, basically. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I didn't really get on with it too well.
Fair enough. Yeah, I got rid of mine as well because when I was getting into it, I blew up a tweeter of one of my main monitors with it. So I was like, oh man, this machine is guilty of one of the most terrible things that happened. I had to live with just one tweeter on one side for like 2 months because it needed to come from the UK, and yeah, it ruined my tweeter. Anyway, but in theory, it's like one of the best drum machines out there. But it's always with all of the Electron gear, you have to. It either fits you or not. If you don't gel with it after like using it for 2 months, forget about it. If you're not in love with it, then it's pointless. So, but the machine drum is that's something that's really a machine that I love dearly. That does exactly. It's whatever I do on it. It sounds amazing. Its sculpting possibilities are just absolutely endless. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Any Octatrack in your studio, Petra?
Yeah, I have an Octatrack as well. Right now, it's not up because I have 4 Electron machines, and I have 4 power supplies, and one of them broke.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So right now I'm not using it, but I'm using the Octatrack also live. I use it a lot, like with the mono machine. The mono machine has 6 outputs. So I can have like an output for the synthesizers, and then I can have an output into the Octatrack, and then use effects and stuff on the Octatrack and sample it and stuff. So I like it that way. But I never create, like, as you say, a whole track on the Octatrack. It's mostly for like adding atmosphere or adding like weirdness to the stuff. Yeah, I think it's really, really good for that.
Yeah,
also,
I think sorry to interrupt you, but I think it has to do with the fact that it can do so much, and you almost feel guilty just to use it for one thing.
Yeah, yeah, it has a pretty steep learning curve. I mean, it also took me a while I was like only using three things in it, and then like just slowly being like, okay, there's also this, and then actually kind of feeling guilty for not using maybe 60% of the machine, and then being like, am I really doing this right if I can't use the whole thing? But I mean, if it works, then it works, and then you can always add some stuff. I mean, that's also how a music studio works, right? You don't start out by having like a full studio. You start out with one piece of gear, and then you add on like over the time, and that's how you learn to make music. That for me as well.
It took me, I don't know, I decided I wanted it, and I spent the necessary time with the manual to get my head around it, because it is one of the machines that you can just not operate fully if you don't really dive into that.
Yeah.
And then I kind of forgot about like 80% of what it can do.
I did that as well.
And I decided, it can do so much. Let it just be like a Swiss Army knife sitting around the studio. And when I really need one of the functionality aspects of it in some circumstance, I'll go for it and just not feel guilty about forgetting what it all, what it can do more, So.
Yeah, I've also, I mean, very often I come back to the manual to just be, because then I'm like, okay, I want this and I know it can do it, but I just don't know how. And then I just spend a couple of hours with the manual, and then it's actually, I mean, it's not that hard if you put some time into it.
No, and it's also there is this sort of electron way of doing things, and sometimes by just tapping things and just looking for it, you can find it, But it's not. You need to interact with it almost every day, I guess, to really fully know your way around blindly. To have everything go by muscle memory. That it just takes ages before you get there, and some people can do that because it's their main machine. But if you have it on the side as to do occasional stuff, then you always run into situations where you think, oh shit, how do I do this? So cool. Well, listen, people, we've been talking for almost 2 hours. Usually we do around 2 hours, but at the end we give everybody a little time to plug anything they're working on or want to share with the audience. Maybe give one more shout out to the people on Twitch. If there's anything they want to ask us or want to know from us, this is your time. And in the meantime, maybe I'll start with Luke. Anything coming up, Luke? Anything on your label?
Yeah. So just released an Agent Orange re-release, which was on Loop Records in 1995. Warm Love, Old Carrie Leckerbush alias. And that's just come out with a remix for myself. And then next week, launching a new label called Positive Source. And Sugar has a track on that, along with Neva, O Professional, and Alan Backdrop. And a few more things in the works. Haven't quite announced it yet, but maybe good to do it now. But
go for it.
Alpha Tracks is going to do a new record. I think that's going to come up in August. And there's some more stuff in the pipeline. Another Positive Source record in September or October. And so I've been working quite a lot on the label, and actually that's more or less taken my main focus. Just trying to sort of expand it and open it outwards, and integrate this new sub-label as well that I'm running with my partner, Philippa.
Awesome. I see Sanders posting your Bandcamp page, so I would encourage people to have a look there. Thanks, man. Petra, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I have an album coming up on Lobster Theremin, or an EP with a remix from Nene H.
Cool.
And we have just almost finished the record with Sugar. And I think that's about it right now. Yeah.
So, any plans for a release? When is this project coming out? Do you have any ideas?
I hope like end of the summer ish. Yeah, on Lobster Theremin.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice one. So I hope Sander's keeping up with posting the links. Otherwise, you can just post it in the private chat where we can where people can find you, and then Sander will. Okay. Cool. Sugar, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I've got an EP coming out on Bassiani's record label in September, and a whole bunch of stuff coming out on my own label, including the EP together with Petra, an EP I made with DJ Val, and EP with D-Dan. So there's a bunch of stuff in the pipeline. And the next up on my label is gonna be an album actually of Copenhagen artists, a new how do I explain this? It's not techno. It's experimental mix of electronica, house music, and ambient stuff, and it's really amazing, and I'm looking much forward to putting it out.
Sounds great, man. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So yeah, all three of you, thanks a lot for being on. Really enjoyed chatting
thanks
with
for
you
the
guys.
invite.
Super nice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me just end by saying that we have a Discord server where all the nerds hang out and continue the conversation on everything we talk about here, like studio nerds all over there. So have a look there. It's a really nice place, really nice community. And the other thing is we have a Patreon page. If you like this podcast or whatever it's called, you can support us there, or you can get sound banks. Actually, the most recent one is a shitload of drum hits done with an SDS8 running through an Akai MFC42 filter. I think that I'm saying that correctly. So it's a collection of really crunchy noises and kick drums and stuff like that. So it's out there for you to get. So yeah, the other thing we have is masterclasses available there. So if you want to get some help getting your productions to the next level, have a look there. Sander should be posting the link now. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. Thanks again, everybody, and thanks for everybody who is watching this on Twitch. Yeah, good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.